This is the Real Estate Rookie Show 13. My name is Ashley Kerr, and I am here with my co-host, Felipe Tiny Biceps Mejia. And it is the best day ever because our guest just called him out for flexing on the gram.
First of all, Ashley, during the portion of the show where we talk about MVP, I kind of made it a forefront that I am Ashley's MVP. And then Ryan and Drew, who are our guests today, came to her rescue. Yeah,
but everyone knows that you are my MVP, right? You know, I could not do this show without you. Yeah. So today we have Ryan and Drew back with us. So we talked to them a couple weeks ago on Rookie Show 9. Drew has done amazing since he was last on. He already has 6 deals from doing this direct mail campaign. And we have them both talking about the next steps of the deal. So last time we kind of talked about setting up your business, getting your branding, doing the website, sending out the letters. And now we go through a specific deal with Drew as to, getting in front of the person, setting that appointment, negotiating with them, building that rapport, and then closing the deal and what happens after that. And he gives us the numbers on one of his deals. So it was really great to listen to.
Absolutely. If you are interested in wholesaling, business, real estate, all aspects, this directly contributes to that. So make sure that you listen. There's some great nuggets in here, specifically on wholesaling. But, Ryan and Drew both talk about, building rapport with your clients as well and how important that is, listening to them. So I think this goes across the board, specifically wholesaling. But honestly, I think everything they talked about, I could use in buy and hold and in everything. So I think it's going to be a great show. Part 2 is definitely going to be super, super good. So make sure that you're listening. Take notes. Get your paper out. So let's bring in Ryan and Drew.
Drew and Ryan, we had you guys on a couple weeks ago, and we started out with talking about the marketing you're doing to try to find some deals for Drew. Do you want to kind of recap that for us?
Yeah, Drew, you want to recap or do you want me to recap it?
Episode 9 we did a couple of weeks ago, and I've done a fair amount of real estate in the past, lots of different transactions, but when it comes to marketing direct to sellers for their homes, a lot of the just modern ways of putting yourself and your business out there, I was very much a rookie on that front. And so began seeking out mentors and people who could really teach me that niche that I was missing. And Ryan was one of those people that we landed on.
If for anyone that wants to kind of hear what the whole show was about, you can go to BiggerPockets.com/rookie9. And then, you can see everything that we talked about, Ryan and Drew, Ryan being a professional, Drew being a newbie just in this field and, what it took to overcome some of the things that he had to go through. So if you want to go back and listen to the whole show, like I said, BiggerPockets.com/rookie9, that's where you can, find that. Basically, Drew is a very, busy professional, but still wants to find off-market deals. Did some research, found Ryan, and Ryan was like, yeah, because Ryan's a professional in this field. Drew was like, okay, perfect. So I'm going to, get with him and get this going. Seeking out a mentor is really important. And then, Drew was able to set up a local brand, an online presence, just get some really, really good positive reviews. Using the how to win friends and influence people type of marketing. Is that about right, Drew?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Put a nice little bow on that.
I want to go on and focus about your first direct mail campaign. How did that go and where are you now with it?
Sure. So as we mentioned in the last round, the first type of mailing that we started with was absentee owners with equity. And we've just done that first campaign, and truth be told, it kind of exploded in ways that I knew it would be positive, but it has really took off. Just to put some specific numbers to it, I think from that first mailing of about 2,600 mailers that we sent out, there were 85 leads that came in. Of those 85, we had nearly 50 appointments that we connected on with people.
That's great.
Yeah. And, of those, we put 25 offers out, and, maybe here in a bit, we'll talk about, some of the fruits of those offers.
What does your mail piece say? Like, what specifically does it say?
We'd have to break your legs. No, it's really pretty straightforward. So kind of like you touched on, it's how to win friends and influence people based. So we try to kick off the conversation with the person We never call out like if we know something's going on. So if it's like a foreclosure mailing, we're not like, sorry to hear that you're about to lose your home. We'd like to take it from you, right? It's our copy is pretty much the same on everything. It's kind of a Dear John and Sarah, what are your plans for 123 Main Street? We've prepared a cash offer we'd like to discuss with you. And then Drew uses our answering service. So please give my office a call. The way they're not expecting to talk to Drew. At phone number, thanks in advance, signed by Drew. And then it's, branded, ties back to the Carrot site, has his website and stuff on it.
Well, that sounds too simple to work, Ryan. What do you mean? That sounds way too easy.
Yeah, it's, there's no need to do these like expiring offer, final notice, mailers that look like a check when they open them. Like, nobody wants to start off a relationship feeling deceived or threatened or scared. It's just my take on it. I mean, does it work? Sure, it must, or people wouldn't do them, but it's just not the kind of business I want to run.
Prior to connecting with Ryan and kind of learning from his knowledge, I've done a lot of direct mail on my own. I don't know that it's been very systematized or very organized, but we did have some of those canned messages where we spoke to whatever the hardship or the issue was. And there was some fruit from it, but not nearly like we're seeing now. And there's value in just putting a basic message out there. And people seem to respond to it much, much better than they did for me in times past.
Well, I think the problem when you call things out. So my brother's father-in-law passed away a couple weeks back. And one of my buddies mailed his mother-in-law with oh, so sorry for your loss. I'd like to buy your house. And let's just say the feedback she provided was not great.
Yeah, I would not expect that to be.
Nobody wants a sorry for your loss from a stranger.
Yeah, especially when they're trying to get something out of it at the end. I mean, even if he had good intentions of, I'm going to help her by purchasing the house, it just doesn't come off that way when you kind of call out what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
Hey, Drew, let me ask you a quick question there, bro. What's a good response rate for the mailers that you sent out? So let's say you send out 2,000, 5,000. Give us a real life example of how many you've sent out in the past and you're like, okay, this would be a successful response rate.
Oh man, that's a fantastic question. It's tough to put a number to. If I'm going to send a batch out that big in times past, I would hope to pull 1 or 2 deals out of that. I think I would have felt that would have been a success. Now this round's been much more successful, so it's probably realigning my expectations. We plan to start mailing some different lists going forward, and it'll be really interesting to see what sort of response rates we get from, different niche lists and things like that. So I don't know that I have a magic number for you, but I can tell you it's exceeded my expectations.
So I can speak to that a little bit just because
I was going to say, Ryan, would you mind telling us what you think as a professional in the field? What's a good response rate? What have you seen?
So the average that I've seen with our clients all across the board is between 1% to 3%, kind of on average. If they're below that 1%, on something like an absentee owner campaign, that's perfectly okay. We just know we need to go more niched down in that market. We need to get a little bit more creative than just they own a house they don't live in, right? There's obviously outliers. We've had 6% and 7% response rates as well. But I would say with our pieces, on average, about 1.5 is what we normally see. I would caution you not to focus on the metrics like that don't matter. Really good way to look at this. Like, let's say you have 2 marketing campaigns that go out. One gets a 1/10 of a response rate. The other gets a 10% of a response rate. But you don't get any deals on the 10% response rate. Well, which one would you probably want to mail again? I want to mail the one that produced fruit, even if I wish it had produced kind of more leads. So I typically focus on the number of pieces sent per deal, or the amount of money spent per deal per list is kind of how I look at it.
Okay, cool. Now, Drew, let's talk about, so what's happened. You had, the 25 people you set up meetings with, correct? It was 25?
Yep.
Yeah. So what came out of those? Have you gotten any actual deals out of it?
Yeah. So we had 50 appointments we went on. I made about 25 offers on those properties. Now, as I grow and learn more.
If I could just cut in, how are you making those offers? I mean, are you actually writing up a contract, a letter of intent, or is it verbal? that you're doing the offers with these people?
Sure. It kind of depends on whether I'm physically there with people or not. Rapport is a big deal, right? And so when you meet with these people, getting to know them and understand their situation and kind of understanding the bigger picture is important. And so I try to stay flexible and feel out the situation. If they are ready for an offer because they are done and they need to be out in 2 weeks, then I'm going to give them one on the spot. If other folks really kind of push back hard and they're just not quite ready, I'll make it available. I'll let them know, hey, if you're interested in it, I can make you an offer today. But if you need to think about it, I can follow up with you tomorrow, day after, and kind of put the timetable on them. So I don't know if that's the best approach, but it's been fruitful so far.
Drew, how do you know what you're going to offer? Like, how do you analyze that deal, that market, and how do you make a fair offer to, the potential? Like, how do you come up with that number?
Sure. So I think everyone's answer to this is going to be a little bit different in their specific market. And of course, with coronavirus and all of that, that's probably influenced some of, at least my strategy a little bit. But generally speaking, I'm looking at what I think the value of that house is. And I'll begin at about 70 to 75% of what that property is, minus whatever repairs I think that the property needs. One of the houses that we looked at, it literally needs nothing. I could list it today and it would sell, but they own 3 houses and there's been an illness in the family and they just need to focus and be done with this house. In that scenario, I didn't have to discount for repairs and things like that. So I gave them a 75% offer based on the current value of the house.
Beautiful. Nothing like making 25%.
I like that because a lot of people don't realize that, people are selling their homes for different reasons, and it's not always necessarily money, right? Sometimes people just want to get out of it because, they have to sell it because, I don't know, a death in the family, a divorce, these ugly things that do happen. But sometimes people just need to get out of it because it's court ordered or they have to split it or whatever. It's not always the pressure of money that they have to sell it, right? Sometimes people are moving and they just need to get rid of the home, and they care about the money, obviously. But more importantly, they're like, man, I really just want to get out of here in the next 30 days because I have to move or whatever the case may be. So it's not always money driven.
Just for anybody who's going to go direct to seller, is like the concept of motivated sellers is kind of a lie. It's very, very rare that somebody calls me and they're like, the court said I have to sell in 2 weeks, so what's your number? Honestly, a lot of the people that choose to sell to us are wealthy and just don't want to have to deal with it. A lot of people also assume that the properties are going to be just like totally destroyed. That's not the case. I mean, like Drew mentioned, this one needed nothing. We flipped a condo last week that we made like $9,700 on overnight that we didn't have to put anything into it repair wise. It was literally move-in ready. So we kind of use the expression around our companies that we're just looking for reasonable people, somebody that understands that in order to get cash for a property and close on the date they pick, they're going to have to give something up. And that's going to be cash, right? And so I want people, if they start to do a direct mail campaign, they're going to get really frustrated with like, nobody's motivated. Well, they're typically not motivated. They're typically start out asking too much money. We explain where we're at, make the offer. They tell us no. We follow up a few times, and then we come up a grand or two. They drop 20 or 30 and, bam, we have a deal, but it took a month to get it there.
That's really interesting to hear because I'm a big believer in it doesn't hurt to ask, and you should always ask. And I feel like a lot of people, myself included, are thinking about these motivated sellers, which ones, who are the people in foreclosure, who are the people that aren't taking care of their property that, can't afford to upkeep it anymore. But that's a really great insight, is it's not always those people who are willing to sell. It's just people want to be done, or they want the cash and the quick closing. And I was talking to a realtor the other day, and she said it's not always about, the monetary amount of the offer. It's about the terms of the offer that can make such a huge impact on whether this person's going to accept your offer or not. So I want everyone to really think about that and let that register. But Drew, let's get back to you and your deals. What came out of it? I'm dying to know.
Do you want one specific example or kind of the big picture?
I give the big picture and then dive into one.
Yeah, that's great.
So right now, we have 3 that we've done from start to finish, and I say start to finish because we've purchased it and either wholesaled it, or I've kept it as a rental, or done some sort of creative buy and hold, something like that. So start to finish, we have 3. We have 3 more under contract.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It's pretty exciting, honestly.
That's insane.
So let's refresh
Ryan
everyone.
sounds jealous.
Yeah, whoever didn't listen to the first episode yet, let's refresh them, and even me. When did you start doing this mailing campaign?
I think it went out at like the very end of March.
Yeah, that's
and given that
awesome.
it's mid-May now.
So let's just highlight that date real quick. So during COVID, while most people are like, oh, nobody's going to buy or sell their house or whatever, you've done 6 deals.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Ryan sounds a little
there.
jelly there.
And
we've done deals too, but
yeah, and I've wondered, are people more motivated right now during COVID? And I don't get that impression, not more than when I've talked to other people. So it's not like I mean, if anything, I think more people are kind of, locking themselves down, kind of holding on to their money, their houses and property. If anything, I don't think it's the opposite.
Drew, take us through the process of working a lead, a step-by-step. Like a lead comes in, they're interested. What do you do? Like, what does that look like step by step from the moment they got interest to you closing the deal? Give us all the secrets.
For most of these, I start with a phone call back to these individuals, and really, again, rapport is the biggest thing. So it's really just getting to know them, letting them kind of tell their story. Some people will be motivated and they'll come right out and tell you that. Other people, they just want to know what your offer is. And so the more I can get to know them and kind of explain to them who we are and what we do, that's kind of step number 1. And so then that conversation could branch lots of different ways. Some people want to get immediately to numbers. Other people just want to get to tell their story, because everyone likes to tell their story, right? My goal, though, is to try to set up a face-to-face appointment with them at the house before the end of that call. And most of the time we're able to achieve that, but not every time.
Ryan, I want to ask you, last time you had mentioned that you can, get people as many deals, but they need to be able to close those deals and be able to get in front of the person. Can you give us some tips that, you have given Drew and that you give other people as to, how to interact with these people when you are meeting with them during that first engagement?
yeah. So, I mean, Drew kind of touched on it a little bit. Rapport is obviously the biggest thing. So, it's funny because I've been on appointments and then it's like, notice, the one I have in mind in particular, was a older, retired vet. And I noticed he had like 15 bottles of Johnny Walker Blue on like a shelf of all like empty bottles. So it was like, okay, A, this guy likes to drink, but B, he's into Johnny Walker. So I just kind of acknowledged it, they make, great scotch. And he just lights up, and it was like that was his thing. And I kid you not, he goes, "Oh man, yeah, it's like that's my one vice I've got. Hey, let me show you my stock portfolio." Pulls out his portfolio, drops it on the counter, and goes, "I have $1 million in the stock market. My goal, Ryan, is to move to the Philippines and get me a wife or 2." And I was like, okay,
Or 2.
no judgment there. He goes, old guy like me with $1 million, I'm going to live like a king for the rest of my years. And I just need to sell this house to get on my way. As you can see, I don't need the money. And before that, the whole interaction was like very kind of like caged off. He was very just like, yes, walk through the home. Let me know what questions you have. I mean, it was like, we kind of just flipped this switch. So we're always kind of looking for like, what's their thing? Is it a pet? Is it traveling? Is it cooking? Is it, so it's, like we've noticed, particularly gentlemen with turbo diesel trucks, like that's their thing. So you notice a turbo diesel dually sitting out front and you comment on it, and all of a sudden they're like, oh heck, and they'll like bro down with you right away. Right. So it's kind of looking for that. And then, similar on the closing kind of percentage, beefing that up side, we kind of use the same approach we do with our marketing. It's not this like, well, I can only buy one house today. Is it going to be yours or is it going to be my next appointment? Let's go. We need to get this signed. Like, we're not pushing people into anything that they don't want to do. which is great because then we don't have people calling us the next day asking if they can get out of the contract they signed. So our approach is very much like, hey, Mr. Seller, my contractors are going to charge me X to remodel this property. Knowing that, what do you think is fair? So we're not telling them this is what your house is worth. Because the problem with that, you ask 5 different realtors what it's worth and you're going to get 5 different answers. We're not telling them your house needs $20,000 worth of work, because then they're going to be like, oh, well, my buddy Bubba, who I pay in beer, will do it for $3, right? So by making it this is what makes sense for us, this is where we would need to be, we're also protecting our integrity. One thing I learned early on when I would throw out like your house needs $20,000 worth of work, anybody else could make me a liar if they disagreed with that number. By telling them my contractors are going to charge me X to get this into the condition of my other properties, they can't argue with that, right? Like, hey, you may be able to get it done for less. I'm just telling you the guys I'm comfortable with that do all my projects are going to charge me this. So what do you think is fair? So it's very kind of how to win friends and influence people based, and then kind of just last pro tip I'll throw out there on that. We'll use anything they mentioned as a rebuttal. So if they throw out well, I'll just list it. Well, you told me yourself earlier that you tried that in the past and the house didn't sell. So where would you need to be in order to make this work? So it's, you mentioned like just asking. One of the phrases we have is just see what you can get away with. So if somebody tells you no, that's not the end of the conversation. See if you can get a second no, and then maybe a third. And it's funny because some of our guys will come back and they'll be like, dude, they finally said yes. It's like, yeah, you just got to keep pushing.
Right.
Yeah, no,
right.
that's really good. But I feel like in most of your conversation there, you were talking about rapport, diesel truck, the guy moving to the Philippines, 2 wives. I don't know about that one, but whatever.
I judged him a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. Just a little. That million's going to go real quick. So building the rapport is super, super crucial. But Drew, back to what we were talking about. So let's get back to that step by step. Okay. So you built rapport with the person. You hopefully have got a face-to-face meeting. Now what?
So even before that first call, I'm aware of what I think the property's approximately worth. But once we get that appointment, then I really kind of dig into it before I go, making sure that I'm pretty confident in what I feel that, the neighborhood and the house is worth. And then we go to that appointment. And again, hopefully they're willing to take us through and show things, but I don't, I kind of let them lead, right? At least I do. What they're comfortable with showing, then I'll take a look at, and some people are real nervous and say, oh, the house isn't clean or it looks terrible. And I just tell them, look, I've seen some of the worst. However bad your house is, it can't be as bad as some of them that I've been through. But we go through it. And, by the end of the appointment, either I like for them to try to put their number out there first, if there's any way to get them to say what they're thinking, because that gives me an idea of, are you $50,000, way over asking or way over what it's worth or what I'm thinking. And sometimes that's hard to do. But if I can get them to, give me an idea of what they're looking for, then I can start the discussions of, well, here's what I'm thinking. Admittedly, one of the hardest lessons for me to learn in these last 6 weeks is to, I tend to let my number be too high right out of the gate. And I have proven to myself with time and practice that if you start low, it gives you more room to come up, which makes you look more gracious and more agreeable.
Why do you feel like we do that? Why do you feel like you come in too strong right off the bat, offering like this top dollar where you don't have any flexibility?
When you go to build rapport, you want to have a good relationship with them, right? You want to be that guy or that gal who's going to either help fix their problem or just, have a good relationship. And, I think for me, it's the fear of lowballing someone and immediately ruining that relationship. As I push myself, I've learned that you can still be really honest with what you need for it to work for your business. And people don't seem to get too upset if you've done a good job of listening to them and hearing what they have to say while you're there.
What happens? Let's say you're in there. Great thing. Hopefully you haven't got cussed out of the house. Let's say you guys agree on a number. What next?
Yeah, if we agree and it's that easy, I always have purchase agreements with me, either on paper. I tend to do everything electronically, but a lot of people don't do email, things like that. So if I'm there and they're agreeable on site, we try to knock it out while we're right there. If you can tell that seller is very tech savvy and they'd prefer to have it done electronically, I let them know, okay, I'm going to jump in the truck and head home, and you'll hear from me within 2 hours. And if I tell them it's 2 hours, then I absolutely get back to them within 2 hours. I think.
Drew, do you ever give a deposit to them like that first day when you're there?
I personally don't. My process. Yeah.
That was a good question.
No, it is a good question. I think a lot of rookies ask, how do we get the ball rolling on it? What I do is on my purchase agreement, of course, there's a field for earnest money, and I'll put a modest amount for earnest money, but that gets sent, in my world, that's get sent to the title company along with the purchase agreement.
Yeah, because good luck getting earnest money back from a seller if you do an inspection and find out you can't do the deal. They're like, no, I'm just going to keep it. And it's like...
And do you guys do an inspection period too? Or does that really depend on the deal?
I do on every deal. I mean,
oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, we, our guys, so in my business, I have people who go and actually do acquisitions for me at this point. I'm not going to meet with sellers anymore, but like they're not contractors. Mm-hmm. So, they may come up with the estimate of this needs 30,000 and we may get in there and be like, this needs 80. Like, how did you botch this bad? Right. So, we tell all of our sellers it's an inspection period, but we're not doing like a retail inspection. Mm-hmm. Normally what that looks like is we're going to walk through with our project manager or a GC and just verify our numbers. And we're also pretty clear with them, like, don't start to move out or anything until that's done. Like, once that's done, like, you have a done deal. Mm-hmm. But if, we do that and find, foundation damage or something like that, we're either going to have to lower the price or, we may not be able to come to terms. But we kind of just, like, set that precedent of really clearly explaining what that is. That way, somebody doesn't move out and then the inspection doesn't go well.
Let me butt in there real quick. So here in the state of Tennessee, based on inspection, you have to have a licensed inspector. So how does that differ state to state? So like, for example, on my contracts, I always put, based on inspection, I'm going to go through this deal basically if I don't find something crazy. But if I don't bring in a licensed inspector, then I can't follow through with that based on inspection. How does that work with you guys?
Yeah, that's not an Indiana thing. I've never heard of that before. So
yeah, because I can't just have my uncle tell me, "Hey, this isn't going to work," and then me go back to the seller and say, "Hey, based on inspection, this isn't going to work." If they come back and say, okay, well, who was the licensed person that did that? Then I'm in trouble. So I have to make sure that I pay a licensed inspector.
You would be doing full-blown retail inspections. We fortunately don't have to do that, which I think is better for the sellers as well as for us. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest. We've bought some deals. I've never met an investor who's never gone over budget. We've bought some deals had we done a full-blown inspection, we may not have bought the deal. So it was better for them that my GC missed something, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, one thing I will throw out, because this is the rookie show, like, don't use, BS escape clauses of, partner approval or, funding partner. Like, truly, it should be a matter of, as long as the property matches the conditions you're expecting, you'll move forward with the deal.
I like that. Thanks for the explanation.
Last week on Rookie Show 12, we actually did have a home inspector. If you guys haven't listened yet, it's Rose Buckley. So go back and listen to that episode if you want to learn more about home inspections. She's a licensed inspector, and she gives really great tips as to why you can use one for different properties. But I want to go back to those steps. So you've gotten to the inspection part. You've done your deal, and now, or Drew, did you even say, are you doing inspections?
For me, it kind of depends on my house. Again, at my RIA, my Real Estate Investors Association, that's always how we encourage everyone to do inspections. Maybe the day comes where you feel confident enough that you can go without. And so every now and then I might go without it. But once we've got it under contract, we send the contract and the earnest money to the title company. If we're going to do inspections, I schedule them immediately, because most of these transactions, they move pretty quick. Ideally, they move pretty quick. So we try to get the ball rolling on inspections. And from then, the title company, at least here in my state, title company keeps me in touch or keeps in touch with me to let me know when we are clear to close, and we schedule it and head that way.
So now you've done the inspection, you are clear to close. Then what happens? I mean, you wholesale it, you keep it as a rental. How do you decide what you're going to do with this property? Do you know prior to even getting it under contract? And then how do you wholesale it to someone else?
I know what my plan is long before I ever put my name on a contract. If I don't have a very specific plan with at least 2 or 3 exit strategies in case option number 1 doesn't pan out, if you don't have that, you probably shouldn't be making your offer, until at least have you plan. Your plan might not pan out the way you want, but that's how we approach it. So
I think every episode we've done lately, everyone's talking about exit strategies. It's been a very common theme and very
Tell me
important.
how one, it's a good way to donate your earnest money.
So most of what I do is I like to hold on to most of what I can. I will wholesale some out. What I've done so far is more of hoteling, where I use my money to actually pay for the property, and then I might sell it immediately to another cash investor or I guess maybe owner-occ. But maybe Ryan can speak to best practices for wholesaling, because admittedly, this is an opportunity for me to learn and grow. I haven't learned the art of getting that property under contract and then letting that seller know, hey, I'm going to sell this to someone else, and what that process looks like.
Tag Ryan.
Yeah. So similar to Drew, I love wholetailing. If you have the cash or the private money for it, you can pretty much always make more money.
Wait. What's hoteling? We went
Sorry,
from
I think
wholesaling
this is
to
a phrase
hoteling.
that I don't know if I made this up or not. So
Well, all of a sudden we switched
basically-
there.
It's basically a flip that you do nothing to. So you close on the property, turn around and list it on the MLS. It's funny though, because every time I use it, people are like, are you misspelling wholesaling? And I'm like, no, it's different. So when it comes to wholesaling, similar to Drew, I have multiple exit strategies. So it is extremely rare that we pull out of a purchase and sale agreement. And comically, we're actually the people a lot of sellers in our market go to when somebody else who's trying to wholesale can't get the deal done, right? And we actually just got one of those back this week. So if we go under contract on the property, we want it to be such a good deal that if I can't find a buyer for it, I'm comfortable buying it. Now, that's bit me a few times, but I would rather be a man of my word than be known as the guy who makes offers and then pulls out all the time, right? So my favorite way to find buyers for these deals, it's kind of market specific if they have the data or not, but we use a tool called PropStream, and you can run a search for basically sold MLS listings that went to investors or absentee owners or corporate buyers. So we're basically trying to find investors who bought off the market. You can then export out that data. And in some markets, they'll even have the emails and phone numbers right there. In other markets, you have to go Google those realtors' names and call them. But we'll sort it, look for the most popular ones, call them. Hey, Ashley, I noticed you've sold 5 properties to investors in the past 6 months. Do you still have investors looking to buy? I've got one in the same zip code. Incredible way to move your deals. It's that's one of my quote unquote secrets.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. I wouldn't have thought of that, because even for myself, when I first started out, I had no idea how to, find a wholesaler or network one, where if my realtor would have came to me and said, hey, I know a guy that has, a deal in the area you like to buy, that would have been great for me too.
We typically will bribe them a little bit.
Yeah.
Hey, going commission is 2.5. I'll pay you 3 or I'll pay you 4. On low end properties, which we get in Indiana, if I've got a $30,000 house, there's times I've thrown out a 10% BAC. Where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna make $3,000, right?
Yeah.
I'm now their favorite person. So who do you think they go to next time they have a deal or next time they have a buyer that's looking for something? So I think a lot of people that aren't licensed are hesitant to license or to network with people who are licensed, and I think that's a huge mistake. So Yeah.
Man, that's gold right there. That makes so much sense. I'm going to definitely go back and figure out exactly how to do that, because I would, same thing, you know, I'd love if a wholesaler and my realtor were in cahoots and would just send me everything personally. Everyone makes money, the wholesaler, the realtor, and then, you know, me with the rental property. So I want to move on to the next.
You guys can cut this out if you want, but I have a video on it that I can give you guys the link to if you want to throw in like show notes or whatever that walks through like step by step, click here, kind of a thing.
That's
Yeah, that's
awesome.
really
Yeah.
cool.
So we can put that at biggerpockets.com/rookie13 if anyone wants to check out that video. So thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Ryan. Hey, Ryan, so what are your tips to Drew when it came to building rapport and negotiating? So we've talked about, it seems like those two seem to be the most important part of this, building rapport and negotiating the deal. So what tips did you give Drew to accomplish this and just be very successful?
So for somebody who's done as much real estate as I have, I'm an awful negotiator. Bought a
That's
Range
funny
Rover
because I
and
would have
paid
thought it was
ask.
the opposite. I would have thought you would have been great at that.
No, no. When I bought my wife her Range Rover, they're like, "This is the price," and I was like, "Okay, right." Like I wasn't going to do the whole like, "Oh, I'm going to leave."
That's
I was
terrible.
horrible. So for me, what I really advise people on is just be conversational. Treat them like a person. And honestly, treat the relationship like you're making a friend, not like you're seeing what you can get out of this, because people can feel that difference. Like we tell sellers all the time, even if we can't come to terms, I want you to be better off just having met me. We've even had sellers leave us like Better Business Bureau and Google reviews of like, you know, these guys are the best people I've ever met. We couldn't come to terms. Like, who's somebody who tells you no to your offer and then goes and leaves you a review? So the big thing that I really push our guys on is don't take the first no. Like, I think a lot of people, myself included, were raised that no means absolutely not, right? It doesn't mean ask me again. So for me, early on in my career, I really struggled with like, I'm here and they're like, oh no. I was like, okay, cool. Next lead. My business exploded when I started to go back and, you know, I'm hearing you say no, but did you have a counter? Or how did you get to that number? So it's really just kind of like keeping the conversation flowing. So even on like our negotiation stuff, I mean, I kind of outlined our process. This is our offer because this is what my crews are going to charge me. You know, what do you think is fair? Can we do a deal here? And then just keeping that conversation flowing. It's one reason I love making offers in person if you can, because it's really awkward to be like, oh, okay, and then just like get in your vehicle and leave. Whereas if you're in person, like, okay, cool, no, I can definitely respect that. You know, you mentioned your mortgage is $90,000, and I'm only a few grand above that. But you also told me that, you know, you've got a job transfer coming up in a month. What do you plan on doing instead?
I really like that advice a lot because even when I've done deals, if I submit a lowball offer, they'll send nothing back because they're just so mad and insulted that I did that low offer. And then that's through a realtor. So like for me to have that personal conversation with them makes it a lot easier to keep that dialogue going than, you know, them telling their realtor, then telling my realtor, then their realtor telling me. And it's just not as personable. So I'm really interested in this because I've never done, you know, anything like this where I've had people approach me to buy their properties, but it's never been me really approaching
You
them.
initiating the contact.
Yeah.
So we'll also do what I call anchoring. So, you know, initially, what is your asking price, right? And maybe if they didn't tell the answering service, they didn't tell you before they got out there, you know, what number did you say you're looking to get again? Right? Like even if we know they didn't give it to us, like let's try for this again. But we'll start like right there on the appointment, kind of at that number. You know, if they're like Drew mentioned, they're $50,000 over retail, we'll like, oh wow, how did you get to that number? You know, because typically they didn't do comps or market research. It's just a number that it'd be cool if somebody gave me $100,000, right?
Yeah.
So we'll kind of go through that, and we'll even, if they're pretty firm, we'll even push a little bit more of like, well, you know, the house across the street and 2 doors down just sold for $140,000 below your asking price and appears to be in the same shape. You know, one of the phrases we use is we buy at fair market value based off the condition, right? So, you know, if you're looking to sell this property as is, I can pay fair market value, but, you know, man, I got to level with you. I can't pay Mercedes money for something that's a Toyota, right? Like you wouldn't do that either. And like, no, I get that. So it's, well, we try not to just like sucker punch them. If they're like, I need, 400,000. We're like, well, we're at $3,000. Like we're not trying to do that. But if they're like, well, I'm at 400,000 and stuff comps out at 30, we have California investors that'll call us and they paid 3-4 times that something is worth cash because somebody was a dirtbag and took advantage of them. And we'll just level with them of like, hey, I'm so sorry this happened to you. But before we move any further in this conversation, you need to be aware that stuff retail in this super rough neighborhood you're in doesn't sell for more than 50 grand. So there's no way I'm going to be anywhere near the 120 you paid. So we call it anchoring, but it's really, I think, setting the proper expectation. That way they don't feel like sucker punched later on.
Listening to what you're saying reminds me of something that one of my mentors once told me, which was, Felipe, when you're talking, and this isn't just business, this isn't just real estate, this is life. He said, Felipe, when you're listening to somebody, when you're talking to somebody, make sure that you're listening to understand that person, not just listening to reply. When you're listening to reply to somebody, they know that. One, you're cutting them off and you're ready to spit out whatever you're going to spit out before you even, before they're even done with their sentence. But when you listen to actually like understand what somebody's saying, you're going to get a whole lot further. Like, did you remember that he talked about his kid, 7 minutes ago? Why don't you ask what his kid's name was so that you can refer to him by the name? Or, okay, he wants 100 grand. He thinks that'd be cool. Why do you think that'd be cool, sir? Well, I'd like a brand new BMW. Well, let's talk about that, right? So like listening to understand somebody and their whys is probably more important than just what you're going to reply to them.
I think it's also important to look for what they don't say. So, like Felipe mentioned the kid, if they mention, my son's my entire world, and you notice the property's in pretty poor shape and there's not a kid's bedroom set up. Maybe this is a matter of he needs safer, more suitable housing to be able to spend. So it's like, most people aren't going to come right out and be like, yeah, DCS said my kid can't move back in because the property's unsafe. So you've got to kind of look for like, what are they not telling you? Most people aren't going to be like, yeah, I can't afford to replace the roof, so that's why it's leaking. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that just started. It's like, it's been that way for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So, you got to kind of look for like the signs and signals of what they're not saying, or almost kind of like reading between the lines.
Drew, I want to ask, okay, so if you've gotten, your 6 deals from that means a lot of people have told you no. What are you doing to follow up with these people? I mean, Ryan just talked a lot about how important it is that the first no doesn't mean no. Is there a system you have in place that you're using?
Sure. We made reference in one of the last episode to the CRM that we use, or the system that helps us track all of our leads. ReSimpli, or RE Simply is the program that most of us use. And it's fantastic. It gives, you can build all sorts of systems for tracking, systems that will send out
like text messages.
Yeah, for follow-ups and calendar reminders and all sorts of things like that. And honestly, that was one of the key pieces I was missing prior to using the CRM. And everyone tells you follow-up is key. If the answer is no today, it might be yes tomorrow. And that's something I've had to prove to myself that absolutely is true. And it's taught me some patience as well, because I want to get that offer done right away, but I've had to learn to keep my numbers lower, do the follow-up. The magic is in the follow-up a lot of the time.
Well, and if you jump real quick, right, if I'm like, hey, I'm at 200K, they say no, and I'm like, what about 240? But then I'm going to be like,
you just gave him 40,000.
I'm going to be like, what happens if I say no again? Right? Like what comes next? Right? So typically with us, I mean, we're going to come up a couple grand and try to get them to come down 5 to 10 for every 1,000 we move up. So, we worked with our contractors. We're able to kind of cut some things out of the budget. I know we were at 200. I can do like 203. If that's agreeable to you, when would you like to close? We're kind of, assuming the sale a little bit, but yeah, you want to make sure you don't give them your max right out the gate, because then you've got nothing to come up with. I think people like that back and forth, other than me, right? I just like to get horrible deals on depreciating luxury vehicles. But I think most people want to feel like they got a good deal. So if they feel like they've worked you up, they feel better about coming down.
That's a great point. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Terrible deal on your car, though. That sucks.
Yeah.
You probably should stick to wholesaling. All right. So I want to ask Drew. Drew, if you're willing, will you walk us through kind of like step by step, like you did a minute ago? But I want to hear a step by step on a real life one. So you've done a couple of deals now. Would you mind picking one and walk us through step by step on one of those with numbers and everything?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
I'd
want to
be
hear the
happy to
numbers
do
on
that.
it if you don't mind. Yeah.
Sure,
And
sure.
refresh everyone what market you're into.
Yeah, I was going to preface that with my numbers are tiny because Fort Wayne, Indiana is one of the cheapest places to live in the country. So the first deal that I got under contract for $23,000. And half of your listeners can't buy a garage.
They're like,
$23,000. Yeah. So I can appreciate that. But for what it's worth, this is a 100-year-old house downtown. It's in the path of progress though, which is very, very exciting. So I purchased this for $23,000. We initially started talking about numbers about 18, 19, that's where I started, but she was at 40 and we slowly worked together, kind of like we talked about. Came to terms on that, and this house needs about $7,000 in rehab. And for a house that old, that's pretty fantastic. And that's to get it rent ready. So I was all into this property for about $30,000. And the property managers that I use, they've been doing those fixes right along the last couple of weeks and just finished them up this week.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it actually went really quick. So it got listed this week. We're asking $800 per month. Now, admittedly, that's kind of a big number for the area, but like I had mentioned, there is a big industrial building that's across the street from this, that here in Fort Wayne, this is going to be a massive rebuilding of new commercial, residential, parks, fountains. It's going to be for those of us who are local, this is a very exciting project. And these people get to watch it right out of their front windows.
They're going to make Fort Wayne feel less like Fort Wayne.
Good. So you have it listed now for rent?
I do, yeah. And it just went up yesterday, so we'll see how it pans out. This deal was small enough that I just used my own money to pay for. Mm-hmm. But I have a private lender who, now that it's stabilized or has been rehabbed, has provided the funds so that I can pull my money back out of that. I don't know if you want to talk about the details of that, but that's been a really good strategy for us.
Yeah, dig into that a little.
So this would be like your long-term financing he would do?
Yeah, which is a little atypical. A lot of times, we talk about hard money lenders or private money lenders, and a lot of times those type of loans are for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months while you're going through a project. Well, I have a couple of different private investors, and some of them like their money in and out. Some people just want to park it though, because they want mailbox money forever. And that's kind of what this gentleman wants. He wants 8%, and he'll amortize those loans over 30 years. Now,
wow.
Yeah, we give him first position against that property, so that if I were to flake on him or something's not going well, then technically the property goes to him. So he's secured by the property. But yeah, it works really well. And in our agreement, there's an annual renewal. So as long as we both want to continue the relationship, it just moves forward indefinitely. And he's done a handful of projects like that with us.
That's interesting. Did you guys know each other beforehand, or did you meet because you were looking for a lender or he was looking for an investor?
We met about a year or so ago. I've known him for a while, but we started talking about real estate. He's kind of seen some of the things that I do. And so we've tested the waters with some quick in and out deals and things like that. But he wanted something more steady, and indefinite. So it's a great way to pull my money out, So again, I'm in it for 30,000. The note that he gave me was for 35,000. So I actually have netted $5,000 that I can put back into marketing and go to the next project. And he's actually done, I think, 3 of those in the last year for me. So it's been great.
So everyone's going to be asking you for his number now.
Right. We hide him away for sure.
I love when people are like, who are your private lenders? And I'm like, no, none of your business.
If anyone's going to tap him dry, it's going to be me. I want, them to lend
absolutely.
to me. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to one of our fun round. It's called the MVP. And I'll ask both of you this actually. Who is someone who has been the most valuable professional player in your business and getting these deals done? So you guys can't say each other. So Drew, if you want to go first.
Man, that's a great question. Well, I'm going to bounce to Ryan and then I'll come back. I'll come
Okay.
back to it.
Yeah.
Cool. I was like, oh, I've got a few seconds to think this through.
Sure.
I think for
You can pull
me,
a Snoop Dogg and say myself. Have you guys seen that where he's like, I want to thank myself.
Great. So I think for me, actually, I'm going to go with Noah Gilliam. So Noah started out as my acquisitions manager. And then he actually, it's kind of an interesting story, was in foster care and then left to actually start real estate. Had never done any real estate investing. Started out as an acquisitions manager, then kind of got to the point that he was kind of like my gopher. Like, I mean, he was taking tenant calls, was posting notices, was managing projects. And then my wife and I found out we were going to be moving out of Indiana to Southern California. And we brought him in as an equity owner in our portfolio. And that's been incredible.
Yeah.
I get mailbox money on wholesale deals on properties I've never even seen, on addresses I didn't even know we had under contract. I mean, it truly, I've told him a number of times, if I could clone him and I would both be billionaires. So he's really enabled me to kind of live the life I want, but we've also given him the life he wants of long-term wealth for his family. I mean, I think last year he pulled like $125K. So he gets paid really well, but is also building kind of the long-term wealth. And he's really kind of made it his baby.
But he brought you value and structure, and he that's what he brought you, and then you were able to give him the life that he wanted. So it's a mutual thing there. I want our listeners to hear that it wasn't just, Ryan sucking the life out of this gentleman. No, it's both of them giving back and forth, where they're both, because it's like Ryan just said. Ryan didn't say, hey, I wish I had 3 of him so that I could become a billionaire. No, Ryan just said, if I could clone you, we would both be billionaires, right? And that's the difference, I think, between a leader and just a boss or a worker bee. And you know what I'm saying? So I love that you said it that way, because it's so true.
He's 26 and controls $9 million worth of real estate. Not a bad position to be in, right? Yeah. But on top of that, I also want to highlight, when he first came to work for me, I could barely afford to pay him. I mean, our initial conversation, I was probably, 21, 22 at the time, was like, hey, what's the least amount I can pay you and your family won't starve? And it was like $24,000 a year. And his first year, he made like 30. His next year was like 70, then 6 figures, right? So it really is something that kind of grew.
And I think the fact that you gave him equity too is that he probably cares a lot more about the business now that he's actually a partner. And that's something for everyone to think about, is if you do have those valuable people that you want to hold on to, make them a part of their business. Because sometimes, you could have a great job. You could be, building this empire for someone else, but someday that person's going to realize that they're building someone else's empire and not their own.
Well, and especially if you're in real estate and constantly run your mouth about like generational wealth, and then you're like, oh, no, you're just like my hourly grunt, right? They're kind of like, I'm just going to go do this on my own.
Yeah. Okay, great. Drew, did you think of anyone?
Yeah, I did. I host the Fort Wayne Real Estate Investors Association. And so I have a lot of great relationships with a lot of the investors here in town, or at least I'd like to think that I do. But one of the fears that I had getting into wholesaling is, one, there are a lot of wholesalers here already and the competition would be fierce. But my fear was that some of these people that I regard as friends, and they come to me for advice and I go to them for advice, that we would kind of not clash, but, we're working to the same, our businesses are the same thing, right? So it's competition. But what I have found is there are 3 or 4 of them that I know really well, that we still collaborate a lot. They'll get a goofy property that they don't understand, and they'll say, hey, what do you think about this? Does it make sense? And I just did that this week with one of my buddies who wholesales just a ton of properties. And so it's been nice to know that even though we can be in competition with each other, there's just still a relationship and can collaborate. So couple of key people who wholesale from the group that we work with has been nice to know that you can maintain those relationships.
I would definitely make a tweet from this episode of collaboration over competition. I do the same thing with all the big players in my market. We've all got each other's cell phone numbers. We all talk all the time. I think a lot of small investors don't do that and totally just shoot themselves in the foot.
I think there's enough to go around. There's definitely enough real estate to go around to be like, I'm going to do this on my own and I'm not going to tell anybody. And ultimately, you're building a wall around yourself that you're going to end up by yourself.
Well, and if you're that prideful, like I was at my absolute poorest when that was my attitude. I was like, I know everything, yet I'm like struggling to feed myself. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Someone asked me the other day, why do you collaborate with so many people? You're just creating more competition for yourself and all of that. And I guess my mindset is just different. Felipe, like you said, there are more than enough deals to go around. And it's not that you find deals, you create deals, right? And so if you can learn amongst yourselves how to create these deals, I don't know. One of the biggest measures of success for me as an individual is how successful the people around me can be because of our collaboration, right? I mean, if they can surpass my level of success, then that's awesome.
I love that. Thanks for sharing, Drew. And I think everyone on the Real Estate Rookie knows that I'm Ashley's MVP. So we don't need to ask Ashley. No, I'm just
pretty
kidding.
sure they know that. Yeah. Or no, you think that.
It just is what it is. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so
now
we're gonna skip over.
I know how to introduce you during the show.
That's right.
Felipe, Tiny Biceps Mejia.
Oh my gosh! Oh, that hit me in the heart. Oh gosh.
Oh, you have no idea how that hurt him right now.
Low blow.
Oh, you're welcome. I've seen some of the gram flexes.
I'm gonna send you some DMs now.
I've been waiting for this day forever.
Got to help balance the scales, keep them humble.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks, Ryan, for always keeping me humble. Humble Ryan. So with that, Tiny Biceps Felipe is going to move on to the rookie request line. So anyone can actually call in and leave a question at 1-888-5-ROOKIE. And, we might play your call here. And today, the question is for Drew.
Hi, my name is Sally, and I'm from Southern Indiana, and this is a question for Drew. So I'm a medical professional down in Indiana trying to get started. I was wondering if, since you were a medical professional, you felt that you had to hide what you were doing on the side from your colleagues because it might make them question your work ethic, or were you able to take advantage of those business relationships that you've made to help with you growing your business? Thanks, and I love the podcast.
Man, this is a fantastic question. Really good question, because I've wrestled with this very thing. When you go into real estate, every podcast ever says, tell everyone you know about what you do, and because you'll make connections and deals will come from that and things like that. Some people in your workplace are going to be very, very open to that. They're going to be very excited for you. Other people, maybe not so much. And is it a jealousy thing? Is it because they just don't have a similar mindset? It's hard to say. At the beginning, I told everyone. 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I keep it pretty close when it comes to my professional life, because I have had enough experience of, it only takes those 1 or 2 or 3 people who don't have an appreciation for what you do, or they see it on Facebook or Instagram and their perception is that your heart isn't in your day job. And you can't blame them for that, right? I put,
because it's probably not.
In some cases, it probably isn't, today I can say that I love going to my W-2 and it's a good job and I'm grateful to be there. Will that change in 5 years, 10 years? Maybe. But I do real estate on the side to create security, right? And long-term wealth. And that's really my goal. And so some people just don't have an appreciation for that. And so it can create a little bit of conflict in the workplace. So I would tread very cautiously. I think people you have very solid relationships with, tell them all day long. But I don't know that I would tell everyone to shout it from the rooftops, because people will question your dedication.
I wouldn't necessarily be hitting up supervisors in the elevator.
Probably not. And honestly, it's tough, right? Because I work with a lot of physicians. I'm in, the admin level in pharmacy, and a lot of those people would probably invest with me if we had those conversations. But I want them to know that I'm there because I want to be, not just because I'm taking advantage of it. So
makes sense. It's
probably a different answer for lots of different people in different work environments, but that's been my experience.
I like it. So Drew and Ryan, I'm very interested in finding out what your favorite book recommendations for interacting with people, or negotiating. Like, what's your favorite book for negotiating and interacting with people? Ryan, if you want to head that up, and then Drew, let us know.
Yeah. So I think my favorite, the title's escaping me.
I'm the worst at that. I cannot remember titles and authors. Forget it. No way.
Jocko Willink, leadership book. Somebody help me out here.
Extreme Ownership.
Thank you. So mine was less people and more leadership. I don't think I ever set out understanding that I would be a leader and that I would have people under me that like I sign their paychecks, right? So for a long time, I kind of just shirked that responsibility of your check's going to clear. That's all you get from me. And that book was pretty eye-opening for me of just like the places that I needed to show up and be supportive and encouraging, and also take the ownership when stuff, broke, because I can't expect my people to show personal responsibility if I don't show it myself. So probably that one for me.
Drew?
Yep. And Ryan, you can help me with the title of this one. What's the main Chris Voss book?
It's the negotiation
I know it
one.
too. Yeah.
Never split the difference? No. Never split the difference.
I know a lot of people recommend that book
because it's good.
He's a negotiator by trade, like hostage negotiator. And the tactics that he gives you in each and every chapter, like you can read one chapter and start using it immediately.
Such a good book.
Yeah, even at home, and tread cautiously if it's your wife or your husband, but it works. It totally works. Now I've listened to it twice, and usually I listen to books. I've got a hard copy of it because I'm going to try to read it and just take in more of it because it's just powerful stuff.
Great. Those are both great recommendations. So thank you guys. And can you let everyone know where they can find out some more information about you or contact you?
Drew, good sir.
Yeah, sure. Again, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Drew Wiard. It's Wiard. And on Instagram.
It's Wizard without the Z.
Yeah, Wizard without the Z. Yep, that's the easiest way to remember. And then on Instagram, I'm now the Flying Investor. We talked last month about how I fly paramotors, and that's very much my passion. So that's where you can find me.
Ryan?
Best for me is just ryandossey.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram just under my name.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here again for part 2. And maybe we'll have to have a part 3 sometime and, see where you guys are investing or in what's going on. But I at least have taken so much value from learning this process with you guys and, especially seeing Drew grow through it as a rookie at using this kind of investing technique. So I want to thank you guys very much again for doing it. And
my pleasure.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll have you guys back sometime. I am Ashley Kerr, and Felipe Mejia is my co-host with Tiny Biceps. And thank you so much for listening.
I hope that sticks.
Oh God, I hope that does not stick.